Okay, well, good evening, everyone. As Armand said, my name is Gabby and I'm a senior Peace and Social Justice Studies major. And this last summer, I had the opportunity to work with the U.S. Department of State, and I believe it was one of the most enriching experiences that I could have had my time in college. So when I came to Berea College in 2014, I really didn't know what I was going to study, and I honestly took my time in deciding what that was going to be. I knew that I had this passion to promote equal access to quality education because that's something that I struggled with growing up. And so I wanted to be sure that other people had access to quality education. But I didn't know how to get that started. I didn't know what programs to really look at. I didn't know what careers that I could really chase. Do I want to be an activist? Do I want to be an educator? Do I want to start in a local school district? Or do I want to go nationwide and work with the federal government? I had all of these questions running through my mind, but what I really found out was that I needed the experience to really decide. So the summer following my summer in EPG, my first summer in EPG, I tried to get an internship with DART, the Direct Action Research Training Center. This was the activism route that I was going to try. So DART is an activist organization that works with local communities to tackle social justice issues by giving them the tools and guidance that they need to use direct action organizing to make a change in their communities. So I was assigned to Charleston, South Carolina, where the local community was arguing with the school districts over enforcing dress code policy because they were forcing a lot of students to miss large amounts of school, and it was beginning to really show. However, while I was working with the organization to try to obtain housing and transportation and all the other things that you need for a summer internship, I realized that they had a really large lack of structure and support, and despite all of my best efforts to organize everything with them, the internship fell through and I was forced to decline their offer. So what I learned from that experience was that I really needed to be working with an organization that had a little bit more structure, or at least some support that I could work with to help them find their structure. So following that failed summer, I actually went and studied abroad in Central America. And while I was there, I was able to see the role that the United States had played in the formation of the area. And what that got me thinking was a little more back into what could I do in the government? Is there interest to go and work on the government side of things? So I began to wonder, is it possible to go and work with the U.S. Department of State to see how America interacts with other foreign nations? So one Google search later, and I found out, yes, they do have internships, and that the application deadline was in 2 weeks. So I had 2 weeks to get my act together and figure it out while I was abroad. So one thing that's interesting in the application process for the Department of State is that you have to decide between two bureaus that you want to work under. So the Department of State begins with the Secretary of State at top, and then it's split up into every topic across the world through bureaus. So they have everything from region-specific affairs to climate change and terrorism. So between all of these different topics that I could work with, I had to pick two. So because of my experience in Central America, I first chose the Bureau of Western Hemisphere Affairs so that I could work with Latin American policy and kind of see how the United States is interacting in those areas. But my second choice was the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. And so this bureau, which is also called ECA, and I'll use that because it's less of a mouthful, their goal is to promote a mutual understanding and better global relations through providing international exchange opportunities for American citizens and for international citizens. So I applied to this bureau to kind of better understand how they provide these programs, and also because this bureau is what gives the Gilman Scholarship, which allowed me to go and study abroad, and for which I really wanted to understand how we could widen their outreach so that more people of low economic backgrounds can have the opportunity to study abroad and be able to get that kind of access to education. So I applied to both of these bureaus, and months later, I finally got a call from ECA saying that they wanted to set up a phone interview, and I found out that their deadline was the next day. So if you ever feel bad about working on a project up to the very last minute and turning it at the last moment, don't worry, the federal government does it too. So we had this phone interview, and at the end of the day, who would be my future supervisor sent me an email congratulating me on being their top choice. However, I didn't get my formal offer until February, which wasn't even a real offer. It was just a notification that my security clearance process had started. And that is a whole other challenge in itself and a whole other story. But I was really grateful for the challenge that it was, because what I didn't know at the time was I was being awarded top secret security clearance, because I was going to be working on vulnerable relationships between the United States and countries like North Korea and Lebanon while I was there. And I was just stunned when I found this out, because this was a Google search and a last-minute application, and I had gotten to the door into this amazing opportunity. So the team that I actually worked with while I was there is a brand new office called the Collaboratory, and it was created by President Obama in 2014, and its goal is to use technology to connect American audiences through virtual exchange programs, and also to develop new and innovative ways for the State Department to work within itself, to create better opportunities for American citizens and citizens abroad. However, when I reached the Collaboratory, there was no really direct understanding of what it was or what its projects were doing, and that was a big problem. With the new administration, they kind of view the entire Department of State as this mess of bureaus that really don't understand what they're doing. And so they saw, the current administration sees that the ECA and all the other bureaus need a complete overhaul in order to maximize the value of the American taxpayer's dollar. And I completely agreed, because when I came in, I saw a lot of the programs that were happening and saw they weren't being run as efficiently as they could. So it was up to me and my team to really prove our worth to the Secretary of State and show that our office was worth continuing. So that made coming into the collab, my role was threefold. First, I had to help the collab define its mission and justify the projects and programs that we already had in place. Secondly, we needed to define what virtual exchanges really were, and through doing that, we had to develop programs that would be considered virtual exchanges. And third, because of my experience in the Appalachian region, what I had to do was help ECA understand how to serve and how to connect with underserved American populations that weren't interacting in the international exchange programs that they had. This was really cool to be able to have these three different roles, because when I first came in, I thought that I was going to be this kind of lowly intern. You know, I'd only see high government officials when I was playing gopher by fetching supplies or fetching lunch or something like that. But instead, I got the opportunity to come in and was seen as an equal employee, and I was getting all of the same experiences as any other government official. And it was through these experiences and that my ideas were considered realistically, and all of my hard work ethic really paid off in valuable once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. So to give you an idea of some of the things that I was able to work on and what I was able to get into, first of all, I got to help with the communications working group for the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS. And this coalition was created by the UN, and it's a coalition of over 40 nations that are all using digital media in order to combat ISIS recruitment. And so that was really cool to be a part of. I also got to assist in developing a virtual book club program, which is currently happening with the Greensboro, North Carolina. And we're connecting them with schools in Nicaragua, Liberia, the Philippines, and Afghanistan. And they're all reading the book Hidden Figures. And we're doing STEM and women empowerment leadership programs in those countries as well. And then I also got to develop and facilitate an 8-week human-centered design course for the entire Bureau of ECA, so that they could better understand how to really approach American high schools and figure out how to outreach and promote their programs so that these American high schoolers would have the opportunity to go and study abroad. So what was really important to me during this summer were the EPG abilities that I was able to learn through my summer experience in EPG. And the first ability that I really used was mobile. Sorry, my slide is different. The first ability I utilized was advocating change. When I arrived at the ECA, I found a host of different study abroad opportunities and scholarships that the government offered that I had no idea about. And I knew that my communities back in Cincinnati and in Nashville had no idea about them either. And so I was trying to figure out how we would get these areas to learn about these programs, because their current answer was they can just look on the website. Well, if nobody knows to go to the website, how are they going to find these programs? So by running a human-centered design course, I was able to ask my coworkers to consider the needs and perspectives of the American high school students and their parents who are going to be looking for these programs. And I helped them understand that they needed to either reform their outreach or just form a completely new approach to it. which led me to using my second EPG ability, which was mobilizing resources. So EPG had taught me that where you should start is with whatever you have. So what I had was I was in this building with every single program office that the ECA had to offer. They were all on different floors, and I was running through each and every one to all these program offices to figure out who I was able to connect them with and whose information I had in order to create this toolkit that my supervisor and I made. So it's not completely finished yet, but what we are doing with this toolkit is we have listed every single exchange opportunity and scholarship that's available for high school students and beyond. And we're going to be distributing them to every single governor's school in the nation, along with every 4-H camp, every Boys and Girls Club, YMCA clubs, the Boy and Girl Scouts of America, and we're making sure that as many students as possible are aware of the program so that they can start utilizing them to their full potential. So that's really exciting. And hopefully it will be out this next summer when those programs do begin and are in full swing. Finally, the EPG ability that I think I was most engaged with was engaging in complexity and uncertainty, because when I came to the collaboratory, my coworkers didn't know what it was, I didn't know what it was, they didn't know what I would be doing, I didn't know what I would be doing, but EPG had taught me not to be afraid or frustrated with this uncertainty, but to see it as an opportunity to just work hard and do whatever I can to make the experience meaningful. So following my summer, I'm not really sure if I want to work with the government officially, but I do see it as an option once the hiring freeze is up. But I'm actually still carrying out my internship throughout this semester by working with the collab as a virtual intern with the U.S. Department of State. So I'm still working on developing that book club program a lot further, and I'm working on special projects as well that I don't have top secret security clearance anymore, but I still cannot talk about. So that's a really cool opportunity. But one of the most valuable lessons that I really learned while I was there in the Department of State is that it's okay not to know what you're going to be when you grow up. I had the opportunity to go and meet with a host of other coworkers and employees across the Department of State, and what I realized is not a single one of them told me I've been working for the Department of State all of my life. Like, every single story had so many twists and turns in it that it was really cool to see, and I totally feel so much better about not knowing what I'm doing after graduation or in the next 10 years. I mean, I talked to one coworker who had worked in the circus for 30 years, the fast food industry for 5, and then applied to the Department of State. There was another woman who earned her doctorate, was an accomplished and best-selling author and professor, and then she applied for the Department of State. Another man was a taxi cab driver for like 20 years, and then he decided to apply. And they all ended up in the same place, working together in the same office. And I just think that's the coolest thing. So I'm really glad that I had this internship to be able to show me that it's okay not to know what you want to be when you grow up. And I'm really grateful for Berea College for giving me the liberal arts education to allow me to be whatever I want to be when I grow up as well. So if there's anybody who's interested in having those kind of opportunities, instead of a Google search, their information is right here. The application deadline is open till October 5th. And if you want to ask anything about that or my experiences, I'm fair game.